Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. How are we doing?
Awesome.
Good
Thank you.
morning.
Good. How are you, George? How are you this morning?
I'm great. It's Thursday. It's tail end of the week, so it's excited. We're doing a live stream, so it's as good as it gets. So
And
we're so excited.
oh yeah, and Matt, it's great to see you. And then everyone, you see, we have this guest. We're wondering who she is. The excitement is building. Before we introduce her, I want to thank Tim Golden for being on our last stream. It was so great to have him. And George, why don't you introduce our new guest that everyone is asking about?
She doesn't really need any introduction. We're all famous, but I will help everyone out who made it. Learned it yet. His name is Marnie Stockman. Marnie, thank you for coming up. She's the CEO and co-founder of Lifestyle Insights. They're a great solution and system for MSPs and IT service providers to have the more high-level business consultation conversations with clients. One of the problems we solve is a lot of IT people speak IT, and a lot of business owners speak business, and there's like this bridge that needs to be kind of crossed. So they do a great job. And so was working and talking with Marnie really about raving fans, getting your customers to be your best customers, and really giving them that kind of sense that these folks are really going to be your best and most important cheerleaders and best next customers, your current customer, that sort of thing. So, and I'm going to say, just talking to Marnie before, she was a high school math teacher before all this. Yeah. That's the hardest job of all. I'm sure we all remember our high school math days. Most of us have some scar tissue around it, unfortunately. I wish Marnie was my teacher at this point. So,
and that's why Marnie's here, right? Because we're talking about the education component of all this cybersecurity framework we're doing.
We're talking education. I'm just going to put out there that Marnie is also an accomplished author of at least 2 books. I feel like there's probably something in the works at this point. I don't think there's ever any kind of finality on something like this, but in the past year, Marnie has released 2 books for managed service providers, literally the book on customer success for MSPs, and most recently the MSP Owner's Handbook, QBR edition, alongside a peer in the community, Juan Fernandez.
And they're just reading them both. They're excellent. They're really good books. I've definitely taken some of the underpinning mindset that comes out of it, and there's a lot about some of it is a big piece of it is educating the customer to develop that outcome. So let's just dive right into our topic today, which is one of the parts of NIST is this kind of like education and training, but we think it's just such a critical piece of it all. And I think that a lot of small business owners don't get the benefit of being educated about this side of the business, and they have no real just framework or place to operate from about the risk they're taking. So I think that and recently we had, and I think unfortunately there was a pretty big event this past week or so with Uber, and I think just want to kind of talk about how that we can use that as a teaching moment. So so Marnie,
absolutely. Well, before we jump in, I think it's important from a professional standpoint to note that we are going to be talking about the breach that took place at Uber, but it's not meant to be a poke at Uber in any way, because this is the kind of thing that can happen to any business. The reason that we're using it in our discussion today is because it's something that happened within the past week or so. It's been in the news, and it's got a high level of visibility, which means it's something that's going to be easy to discuss. It's not going to be a hypothetical situation we're talking about. But again, as we've said many times on the stream, it's not a matter of if, but when. So when we're talking about this today, it's really not us pointing at Uber in a way that's really assigning blame, because a lot of these things can happen. And the goal today is to talk about how training can help reduce the risk of things like this taking place within a business.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Also, I think it's the other place to put it in perspective is that when we're talking with customers or prospects, or you're talking with your customers, or it's a great way to express in a kind of real life example, like a story that you can wrap your head around.
Well, a story that can impact you. Let's say you're a customer of Uber and you understand what happened. It's going to have a different sense to you because you're going to feel a bit exposed yourself. I mean, look, if information happened to be exfiltrated or something, I'm a customer, you're a customer. I'm sure everyone on this call on this today is a customer. So that's going to impact us in one way or another, and that's what makes it, I think, a very appropriate thing to do today in this discussion. So, yes, please, George, please jump back in. I just wanted to get that in there. It's
right. So anyway, just
what happened? Yeah.
Just what happened and how we teach it. So, it was a pretty bad breach. They went in there. Just kind of the sort of humorous aspect of it, where once the attacker was inside the network, they were sending Slack messages and memes to their company, and people thought it was a joke at first. And then people were like,
"That's not a joke. That's the high level of confidence from the ability to get into the network at such a significant level."
It was really scary, and and so this one has so many layers to it that it was at the front end of it, it's a user education problem. On the back end of it, it was very much a policy procedure method problem. So so we talk about, and I'm sure Marnie, you talk to people all day about these educate customers, teach them, and we like preach this like MFA, everything has to be MFA'd.
Mm-hmm.
But the real core of the attack, the initial attack, was an MFA fatigue attack, which is, I don't know if you ever had that happen to you, where someone keeps attacking your MFA, keeps sending push notifications and kind of attacking away at you. So, we have to, I think, really critical, we talk to customers about that social engineering component. So
let's start off. Well, let's explain what happened first. But I think we're jumping in without giving enough context.
I'm getting too excited, Matt.
So just a few bullets. I'll do that, and then let you guys go into
it.
Essentially, there was a social engineering attack that was used to gain login credentials, and as George mentioned, MFA fatigue is the real vector here. And MFA fatigue is what happens when someone starts hitting your some type of authorization that's going to require MFA, and it's going to go to your phone, and it's going to hit your phone over and over and over again until you do something about it. And most people are just going to hit the OK button. Great, stop bothering me. Let me get back to work. And in essence, they're handing keys to the castle in the process. Once someone was able to get in via a VPN connection, they discovered some PowerShell scripts that contained management credentials that were hard-coded. Once they had those credentials, it was easy to gain access to other areas of the network and get into systems such as Slack, where they were able to leave that message saying, "Hey guys, we're in your network." And you can that can boil down to three things. That's what we should be talking about: social engineering, which is really the MFA attack, remote access, and credential discovery. So let's talk a little bit about the what could lead to better awareness around social engineering related attacks in a situation like this. And George, please, I want to pick. I didn't want to interrupt. I just want to make sure we get some context in here.
Marnie, I think it looked like you were gonna.
Well, I will say first, when I hear MFA, my immediate statement is MFA starts with MF for a reason. Nobody likes it, but it must be done, right? So, like, right out of the gates.
Very good.
Wait a minute.
Hold on a second. Those are my initials.
Sorry, Matt Fox, but no, it is a painful thing for many people. I think acknowledging that up front is you can't go in talking about how much you love MFA because people are going to disagree with you. No one loves it.
100%.
So acknowledging that right out of the gate, right? When something's painful, if you're honest about it.
Yeah.
And the more painful it is, people will do everything in their power not to do it. And
correct. So that brings you up to the next piece, which is what you said, is to have a story. So, when we were talking about this before, I mentioned Simon Sinek's the book, Start With Why, right? If you can sell the why MFA is important, they will buy the what. But if you just come in hot with like, let's MFA, they're not buying that story, right? So this Uber situation allows you to have a story, to Matt's point, that you understand, right? I absolutely went and checked to make sure I had MFA on my account. I went to see which credit cards I had associated to Uber. I'm like removing credit cards. Like, what else do I need to do? I'm texting my 20-something children, hey, change your password on Uber. Make sure you have MFA, right? All these things. So because you can feel it, you can then have the conversation of what that looks like for your business. And I think that's the story that you can tell, which is what you were referencing, George. They need the story to understand the why.
Exactly. You have to bring it to, as we were talking earlier, and, one of the things that when we work with customers or especially prospects, it's, a lot of people don't really truly understand what a breach will bring or incident will bring to their company, like the havoc it'll wreak.
Yeah.
It just causes no end of destruction, and it's like, as I said, and I'll say it again, I said to anybody, it's like a hurricane. Until you experience a hurricane, it doesn't really make sense. You watch the news and you see the tree kind of bend, and the meteorologist reporter out there kind of like, the winds are 75 miles an hour, and it's when
that seems like a lot. It's a big storm.
Like, 75 an hour is fast wind. That's a lot of wind.
Yeah.
But if you ever went outside in a 75 or 100-mile-an-hour wind, you'd be like, oh my God, it's like stripping the paint off a car.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing. And
there's a certain amount of discovery that has to be a part of this, that you have to experience on your own, but this is not the type of thing that you want to have to experience. It's like, look, we all know not to touch an iron when it's on, probably because we touched it once when we were kids.
Right. Yeah.
We learned from that lesson. It was painful. It was very quick. It wasn't the potential destruction of a business that we spent our time creating. But you do have to have some sense of that pain associated with it that you can experience to really be able to react properly.
And I think this, to go back to something we talked about earlier, is that idea of risk advising. Much like if you're working with your attorney or working with your CPA or working with your HR consultant, any one of the people in your operation, especially your back office, these specialized roles, our job is to give folks where they're exposed, where their risk is, and educate them on that space. And people talk about that education component, but if you're not telling them a story, they can't internalize it. We just go at them and be like, you need to be, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to check this box, and that's where it really gets people to shut down. Because
that's the personality. That's the personality that keeps people out of gyms.
It's also why many of you will say you had a bad math teacher, because some of them walked in and said, okay, to solve this problem, we're going to do this. Whereas if they spent 5 minutes at the beginning talking about a real world problem and say, so what do you think it would take? Like, why do we care about the answer of this? I want to make sure I have enough cash at the end to buy, to budget something, right? People care about that. Wait, you can tell me when I'll have enough money to get my first car? All right, I'm in, Miss Stockman.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense. Whereas the stories of the train leaving Cleveland at 135 miles an hour and the train leaving California, that's what's that do? That does nothing.
I care deeply about that. What are you talking about?
How many people haven't been on a train if you don't live like in the Northeast?
Right.
Who takes a passenger train anywhere? Unless if you live basically in the Northeast. I mean, everywhere else is sort of like,
you're like that thing that transfers potatoes up the street.
And we're definitely not going in opposite directions at the same time and need to know when we're 4 hours apart. That's not the thing. But so it's exactly the same as your good teachers. I am confident made it feel like it was important to them and to you that we got to the outcome, right? Yeah. So my favorite equation is customer success equals customer experience plus customer outcome, right? But it's all focused on the customer, be it the student who needs to learn the lesson, or be it your client who needs to learn the lesson, right? Like, it needs to be about their business and the outcomes, or the threat of jeopardizing those outcomes, where you can become that risk advisor.
And you have to always be very careful. There's this delicate balance, I think, because now you're just being the fear, uncertainty, doubt guy who's selling fear and hoping people get scared, and that's not really what people want or need.
And I think risk advisor is the right word, because you need to say, right now that we have identified some risk within your business, how would you like to address it, right? We have identified this. We found it. We have some recommendations, but it is your risk, right? Yeah. So what is your comfort level? A lot of entrepreneurs in startup world will be like, wild, wild west, right? But then when they start having things and they're like, oh yeah, I want them, right? I need to protect what I built. So you need to explain, I understand there's a maturity, and let them understand it's their risk. So what should we do about it?
It's funny. That is hilarious. Oh, sorry, Meg, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to Marnie. I'm like, I don't know. In sales, when we talk to prospects, we try to explain it. You've just really packaged it beautifully, Marnie. That's all. I really appreciate that.
It's funny you said sometimes we work with some startup companies, and they're in this phase of the Wild West phase ending in their business, and they're in that phase of where they're like, hey, we need to be serious, because now we have investors, we have people relying on us delivering outcomes.
I don't know where anything is or what we have.
And so it's interesting because we found that the later they learn this or start this process, the way more painful it becomes. Because
Absolutely.
So
just like learning math later, not having
really hard to learn
early.
Start with 5th grade math in your 11th grade year, you're too far behind to catch up, and it feels painful. The cost is too painful.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
absolutely true. So, and I think that when you think of it that way, and just in having it not as an IT conversation, but taking it out of the IT, like stop. It's not about technology. It's not about anything like that. It's all about what is the business outcome look like? What is your goals to achieve in your business? And what are the things that could stand in the way of those goals? And that's what the risk advising is.
Yeah.
And if you do it really well, people feel really good about it. Unfortunately, it's hard because again,
to your point, at a startup, they're not quite ready to hear the whole story, but they need to understand that there is a story out there, right? So if you are advising them, and at the beginning they haven't made a single dollar, so they're not sure what you're protecting, right? Like I have nothing. Go ahead. If you steal my company, you probably get some debt. So if you're paying,
enjoy it, right?
But to be able to explain to them as you grow, right, your needs to protect, et cetera, are going to grow, and we can progress with you. I'm sure there are certainly baseline things that you need right out of the gate. There are some 100%. Protections you must do, right? I always talk about Maslow's hierarchy: food, water, air, shelter. We got to get you that. What is that in terms of technology, right? And then as we level up, what else do we need to do to level up to reduce your risk?
Well, speaking of leveling up in Maslow's hierarchy, I saw George make a movement, which leads me to believe he probably had a pyramid pin on him someplace today.
I did.
So I think what we're going to have to do is when we're done with the stream today, we're going to get an envelope with some of the pyramid pins over to Marnie with the Valiant Pyramid, so she can.
We have a very kind of easy rubric we like to use for this, which is based on Maslow's hierarchy need. It's just it's a pyramid. It's like stability, security, scalability. And the top part is the part that we can't do, which is innovate, because I can't innovate your business for you. That's your job. Yeah. But I'm going to give you those bottom pieces so you have the space to do that safely.
So I use the same words, right? Stable, secure, supportable, scalable. And then because I want to add S's, instead of innovation, I say success at the top, right? You'll increase your success. So if we could, I can't start innovation with S, but I can throw out the success idea for you.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we've got a couple more bullets.
Is definitely not it.
We've got a couple more bullets. We were talking about the social engineering component of what happened. Of course, there was remote access, and I think that's really more of a policy-based thing. It's not so much human. It was access coming from a significant distance, I think, George, right? I mean, I've never been a big fan of the concept of geofencing, especially with work from home and people working all over the world these days. But I think there are certain areas of a network that you can simply protect with extra layers for the safe mind, to be honest with you, if for no other reason.
There's places your employees are not coming from. You should know where your staff is operating out of. Obviously, a big multinational company is different than a smaller, U.S. North America-based company. But we've had it where people travel overseas and they got locked out of our systems because because that's the best practice. So you really have to think about, once again, it's always this balance of inconvenience to convenience and openness. But I think geofencing is a good baseline, and it's all these kind of like layered concentric rings. I mean, there's a lot of different. I've heard it described in 100 different ways now, but it's sort of like it's making it just hard for someone to get into.
If you recall the castle that we worked on a few episodes ago, that's exactly what it was. And then of course there's I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say, and then I want to get to the second part of this because that's where it really gets good. And we're 19 minutes in. Credential discovery, which would not happen if remote access was not capable, was not possible. I mean, that's really it. That's lounging around looking through files.
And the big problem, though, with that particularly was having credentials being stored in scripts, which is a very large. It's just a huge problem. I mean, if you ever read some of the data on some of the repositories of like code repositories, there's a lot of bad stuff stuffed in these. Not bad. It's not bad. It shouldn't be.
There's a lot of things that were not handled the way they should have been for the sake of others to be able to use them in a way that's not going to risk other people's abilities to do things.
100%.
And I think at the end of the day, and just for the heck of it, segment 1 of this was really called Risk Advisors and Communicators, and it is nice to be able to a risk advisor have a great conversation with a really great communicator. And the second half of our conversation today was going to be that impactful education takes more than PowerPoint. 100%. I think that quite often when you see trainings, and I mean ours at one time, other MSPs that I've got to sit in with, and I know people at, a lot of it is driven by PowerPoint, but that doesn't help us tell the kinds of stories that we were talking about earlier. So I just wanted to go through a couple of areas that I think are important when it comes to giving training that's impactful and is going to form not just a lesson, but a foundation for future decision making that these people that are recipients of the training take. And of course, that's the beauty of having Marnie here today as the educator, the incredibly composed educator that's just waiting for me to stop talking. I can see it, so I'm not going to stop talking. It's slightly, I'm just kidding, please. But really, having the right teacher means everything, and people like to.
MSPs are, right? They are the teacher in this space. So here are the tricks of the trade, right? So I'll say 3 things. I could probably go on with 97, but I'll say 3. First, you have to start with your own objective and what you want the outcome to be, right? And that is where you tell the story. So you have to have a clear idea in mind of what you want for the end user so you can get them there without a babbling trail of techno wizardry, magic, and words, right? So first, start with the idea of where you're going, plan your content, plan the outcome that you hope to deliver. Second, not everyone learns the same way. So if you think about your favorite teacher, they might have been a talker because you're a listener. They might have had you read stories because you're a reader. They might have had you listen to video because you prefer audio and video together. It might have been your gym teacher because you're a kinesthetic learner and you'd rather be hands-on. So similarly, you should have options in terms of how you're going to ingest this content, right? Can I jog and listen to an audiobook, or can I read a doc on what I need to do?
Right.
And we talked about this before. The number one thing any educator can do to improve any outcome is feedback. It needs to be immediate. It needs to be personalized. It needs to be impactful. So whatever you're doing, it's just like data. If you're collecting it and not doing anything with it, what are you doing? Like there's literally there are no people in the ether just collecting points on the number of spreadsheets you have. If you're collecting the data, do something with it. If you're training people on phishing, let's see if we're improving and moving in the right direction. I clearly could rant for days on this, and I suspect if any of my former students watch this live stream, they'll be like, "Her hands are going. She's serious."
but that's the thing. They're going to remember how you taught them. Just like a couple months ago when I showed my teacher, Mr. Johnson from high school, I had him 4 years in a row. He's one of the most important people in my world, as far as I'm concerned. And he used to do 2 things. One, he would pretend he was an angry robot that hated calculators, which was great. He would actually come into class. We'd be, I think this was like pre-calc or something, like, I'm a robot. I hate calculators. And he would like literally throw one on the ground and pretend to walk around like a robot. And then he would reward us with donuts. The combination of the 2 was a winning.
That's some positive feedback on the donuts piece right there.
Right.
But I think, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, I mean, and I think even going deeper is like knowing your audience, like, or even or like asking the question, like, well, how do you like
understanding
like,
what's their role in a business? What's their area of responsibility?
What are
how
they
do the
gonna
other
care
team members interact with them?
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I mean, we always feel it's really important to train, different staff at different levels should be trained differently. The vector of attack against an executive or a front-facing person might be different than someone in the back office. Not because they're any less or more valuable, just their level of exposure, right? Like
the leadership of that is important, right? While we're talking about executives, if the executives do not take the notion of being trained properly and lead with that, it doesn't, this is not to check a box, right? It is no longer that I need to just check a box on a cybersecurity liability insurance policy. It's way more than that if you actually want that policy to pay off should you need it, right? So it's protecting your business and not just checking the box. They've got to believe that, and they have to educate. So you have to empower them to educate.
That's
you
really
know,
true.
some of the best things I heard is that modern leadership needs to take this threat to the same level of seriousness that they would take any financial threat
It's
or
existential.
human resources threat. Why would you not take this serious enough that it could impact the business in a deep way? And I don't know, maybe some people just don't fully understand what can happen. I think as part of it, and I think that's why the specialization needs to be a little more, and almost like a platonic method where you have to ask the question, be like, so what, if this happened, what would you do? And almost take them down this like kind of miserable journey.
It's choose your own adventure that's always going to lead to a nightmare.
It's like it involves some kind of horrible press release that you have to make about your company, and I think that's I want you always want to be like, close your eyes now, imagine writing this press release or speaking in front of people about why you lost XYZ, or this happened to your business, or you're explaining to your investors, or you're explaining to your staff that I'm really sorry that we lost all your personal data, and now we're gonna give you this great credit check for the next 7 years, and that doesn't make people feel good.
I actually think that would be an amazing activity to walk through. That in the land of things that would sit up and take notice is if you had me fill in the blanks, right? As a CEO, you have me fill in the blanks of this press release that we're going to put out. I'm Marnie Stockman, CEO of LifeSite, right? Like, and you had me fill in the
in your body. You would
I know
feel
Matt's like, I'm in on this. Matt
No. This is like
brilliant.
damage control Mad Libs. You put your information in, no matter what happens, the thing that you're going to end up reading at the end is not going to feel good. You can change as many words as you want. It's not going to be positive.
It's kind of like it's
like Mad Libs.
It's akin to writing your own obituary, right? Where do you want to? And kind of going back to
how do you want to be remembered,
Marnie? Like, where do you want to go? What's your objective?
This live stream is getting very scary and serious.
Sorry, Megan.
No, it's good. It's proving the point.
I think that's the piece of it, and but getting the feedback, like, hey, was this effective? Do you feel that you understand now, or not, or you just think we're trying to scare you? And are you
going to walk back to your desk having a little bit more confidence, or are you walking back to your desk afraid to touch that keyboard?
Right.
I mean, realistically, I feel like walking out of a security training, whether it's me actually receiving one or sitting in on one, that's usually the thought that goes through my head. Do I feel good about sitting back down at my desk and getting back to work, or am I kind of sitting here with butterflies in my stomach, not knowing what's going to happen next? And I think that the direction that you choose once you get out of that training is really the indicator of how successful it was right there immediately.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think that we all strive to make sure that people sit down a little bit more confident, a little bit more ready to do their jobs without as much worry, because they have that raised awareness of what could be going on around them. It's like being a kid and learning how to walk both ways before crossing the street. We tell children to do that all the time, but do we do it every day that we have to cross the street?
I do in New York, Matt, because
all right, well, okay, you know what? I got hit by a bus.
I have been hit by a car. So that hasn't looked. I'm going to own that.
I got clipped by a bus outside of Macy's a few years ago. I'm just going to stop.
I got hit by a taxi.
What's next?
So, once again, going back to the original comment of maybe some things you don't want to experience, getting hit by a car is up there. So
keep looking both ways when you cross the street.
Exactly.
So, folks, we're here at minute 29, and that went incredibly quickly. I got to tell you, I regret that we had our morning kind of prep meeting and didn't record it, because some of the discussion that came out of that would have been amazing to put along with this online. So I think I'd like to find a time to continue this conversation offline and do something with it, because it really is a good one. And I think there are a lot of people that can benefit from it.
Yeah.
And I believe the next time we'll be on is October 6th.
Yep.
That is my last stream as a 40-year-old. It's a personal story. See, I'm connecting to it. I'm feeling the pain, just like we talked about for the past 30 minutes. Yeah. And we're going to talk about ending the year on a strong note and prepping, really getting the right foot for starting 2023 on the right foot. It's so strange to say 2023.
Yeah,
It really feels like we're getting into the Jetsons space age, at least with the way we say the year. Not so much the flying cars yet, but we're getting there. So that's exciting. I can't believe that we are here. Today's the first day of fall.
Today's the first day of fall. Tonight. Yep.
Does that mean it's officially pumpkin spice season? Because that's when we got to start being careful around the office because everything's orange.
Yeah, people go deep into it. Yep.
I went off the little rails here at the end, but it's exciting to have this conversation. It's exciting to have Marnie here with us today. It was an absolute pleasure. It's always great to have conversation, and it's nice when we get to do it in a small group like this. George, is there anything you'd like to say before we call it a day?
I was going to say, Marnie, thank you so much for jumping on. It's always a great conversation, and would love to do it again. I have so many thoughts on this. Like, I think there's a huge untapped deeper education around this that needs to be discussed.
I'm in.
It's a huge, I mean, it's such and it's such an exciting thought to be able to get folks in a better spot by not just throwing solutions at them, which is really what
helping them understand the problem.
Correct. Like, and internalizing it and making it more than just, once again, checking boxes. So that's really great.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. Well, with that said, Megan, would you like to close us out?
Everyone, thank you for joining us today. Please like and subscribe. Look at our library of great videos on our YouTube channel. And really, if you want to submit a question or anything, we really like interacting with the audience, and we want to answer your questions. Speaking of viewing ourselves as teachers. So please feel free to submit. But thank you guys so much. And Marnie, again, great conversation. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks, Marnie.
See everyone in a couple weeks.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Happy fall.
Bye now.